Ryan Cole, Air Force cross country head coach. Thanks for joining us today. What a beautiful backdrop out there at the Air Force Academy.
Yeah, no, happy to be here, and pretty nice view here at USAFA. So beautiful summer day, and get to enjoy being outside and some social distancing.
Yeah, most definitely. Thanks for taking time to answer the fans' questions today, and of course, the one that is always at the top of all the coaches' lists is how are you? How is your family doing during COVID-19 and all of this social unrest in America right now?
Yeah, doing well. I think it's been a challenging time for a lot of people in a lot of different ways. So, our priority is to make sure that the people that we have contact with and can impact are in a good spot and help them be in a better spot if we can, and then continue that ripple effect out in our communities. And, we just try to make the most of the situation we're in, and it has been a very difficult situation in a few different ways here over the last few months, but sometimes that happens, and we have to make the most of it and figure out ways to be better and to do better. And hopefully we'll be back to some semblance of normalcy in terms of our school year and our routine and continuing to, do what we do here at the Air Force Academy. But overall doing well, so appreciate you asking.
Let's get into it. The first question from the fans is, last season the women's team had its best finish in program history. What, in your mind, made the difference? What made them so good last year?
I think it was a combination of personnel, leadership, and time. We were deeper than we'd ever been in women's history last year, and that was the result of having people that really wanted to commit to being good, but then it still takes time. And so you look at our seniors last year and their progression. It took a few years for them to get going and build up, but we've also had some strong leadership from a cultural development standpoint, but also from a performance level standpoint. So when you look at our history over the last 5 years, women like Hannah Everson and Karina Gillespie, Lindy Long, J.C. Smith, Shanna Burns, there were, Sam Skold. You could just go through pretty much all the alums. It took them a while to kind of set the example of developing themselves and figuring out how to do that. And then we had more and more girls follow those examples. And then this year we had enough of them that had constructive examples of how to individually improve. We had a culture where they were just committed. There are a lot of different things you can do in your college experience, and these girls decided they wanted to be really good at distance running and be an elite team. And that decision was made years ago. It wasn't just made, a couple months before the season started. And then it took time. And so I think it was kind of a confluence of personnel, the leadership that we've had over the last few years, and then just time for enough of the girls to develop to the level to be a highly, highly competitive team.
You mentioned the seniors, and a lot of this, of course, cross-country runners, they also run track because there's long-distance running. You coach that as well. How did the seniors handle the season basically just coming to a direct halt and then having graduation moved up? How did your seniors handle that whole thing?
I think they handled it admirably, but it's a challenge, and you, not just our seniors. I mean, I think you felt for all the kids out there across the NCAA that didn't have a championship season for the winter or didn't have a spring season. And then particularly the seniors that was maybe the end of their career. So it was nice to see the NCAA work with the student athletes to continue to promote that experience, but having an additional season that hopefully a lot of them are able to take advantage of. But yeah, that's tough. But I think the cliche kind of talking point at the Air Force Academy is you're ready for anything, anytime, anywhere. And we don't want to just be ready for it. We want to be ready to make the most of it. And so sometimes you end up in a tough situation, and part of their education here is really being able to make the most of those situations, regardless what they may be. And this spring was a tough situation, but I think the kids made the most of it. They're actually, I kept telling them, for as difficult of a situation as it is, they're very fortunate. They have a job lined up. They have a career track, healthcare. They have some really, really good variables in place that a lot of their peers around the country were thrust into a little bit before, they were prepared for it with the end of the school year, and then trying to figure out the next phases of their lives, where our people, they commissioned as officers in the Air Force. They know what that next step is. There's a lot of security and solid foundation moving forward in their lives. So even as difficult as the situation was, there were a lot of positives, and I think our people were very grateful for that.
It's nice that they do have that job in hand. This next question, maybe from a recruit. If I want to run for the academy, what should my times be, and what's the program like? So sell your program, Coach.
Well, I'm pretty biased. I think the program's pretty neat. But yeah, I think for most people, the biggest thing that you need to take care of if the Air Force Academy is something that someone would be interested in are their academics. So taking care of your academics and making sure those are in a good spot. You know, if you don't have the grades and the test scores, it doesn't matter how well you play basketball, how fast you run, how many yards you average per game, in high school as a running back. You need to have the grades and the test scores. So taking care of academics is step one. Going through the appointment process and doing well in your nomination interviews, the type of person you are, that's another big one. As far as distance running performances, we have information on our website that I would encourage anyone to go to and review for recruiting standards and walk-on standards. But we've also been pretty fortunate to have people get into the academy. They come here, they try out for the team, and maybe they were overlooked by, a lot of different NCAA schools, including maybe even the Air Force Academy, and they try out for the team and they have the right type of demeanor and drive, and they end up being very successful. So we try to provide opportunities, and there are a few different routes to join the team, whether it's the recruiting process, sort of an invited walk-on process where somebody has an appointment but then really improves their senior year once our application and recruiting process is essentially wrapped up. But then we also have a tryout each year, and that's another variable that we've been rewarded for just by providing opportunities to people here at USAFA.
Yeah, you killed two birds with one stone there, because there was a question about walk-ons, but I think you explained it pretty well there. But a lot of people know that apparently you have a great recruiting class coming in this year. So with that being said, what's your expectation for the 2020 season?
Well, it's the same as every year. I mean, we're always going to, if we're doing a good job, we're going to lose a lot of very effective team leaders. And so when those seniors graduate, you have a rising junior class that has to grow into that role. That's a part of their development, not just as cadet athletes, but really as future officers. So they have to step into that role and do a good job, because generally you're only as good as your senior class and the leadership they provide for your program. Behind that, we have a group of rising juniors that I think are going to take some very effective steps this fall and this upcoming year. Our sophomore class, I think, has a lot of ability, and we have seen historically people take big jumps from their freshman year. They get to train over the course of the summer. They're a little more adjusted to the altitude. They figured out life at USAFA, and it's a little more smooth, as well as they're older, stronger, have a little more experience, and usually that correlates into a better understanding of what needs to be done, as well as some confidence that they can do it. And so we tend to see sophomores take a big step, and our sophomore class is very talented. And then when you look at our freshmen coming in on both the men's and the women's side, on paper, they're very talented, but they also know that competitions aren't conducted on paper. So they're going to have to come in, and they're going to have to go through a similar process of all the freshmen before them. But I think they're very excited. I want to see them put the foundation in place so that they can be successful down the road, but that doesn't mean they can't be really competitively successful in year one. But I want to see them continue to build themselves and start to put that foundation in place to see how far they can go over the next 4 years. And so that's really our objective for all freshmen. But I'm excited to get them in. But every year, we want to have both teams at the national championships. We want to have people developing along the way so that when seniors graduate, we're not an up and down program. We're pretty steady and consistently successful. And then I want people leaving the program feeling like they've had a great experience, just something that they're really proud to have been a part of. So those are our goals for 2020. And I'm guardedly optimistic, keeping my fingers crossed here that we get to have the season and get to pursue some of those.
You mentioned training there, and with this pandemic, fortunately, cross country, you run outside. So, but how has your team handled this? Because a lot of these other teams across the academy, if you don't have a ball and a basket, or if you don't have a swimming pool, for instance, it's really hard to train. You guys, though, I'm assuming have been keeping up with the training pretty well.
Yeah, I mean, it's nice to have our full facilities for every facet of what we do. But distance running is a pretty straightforward thing. You put on your shoes and your shorts and off you go. And we are very fortunate with our cadets here for summer programs, that they have an opportunity to utilize the base. I mean, we have the largest Division I campus in the country at over 18,000 acres. The second biggest school in the NCAA is Stanford with just over 8,000 acres. So we're more than double the size of the next biggest Division I school in the NCAA. And if you're a basketball player, that doesn't really matter. You're just going to spend a lot of time in the gym. I don't know if the football players are all that excited about it either. But for distance runners, you can kind of see with the Rocky Mountains, we're right up against the foothills there. We have the intramural fields right behind me, 7,000 feet altitude. No stoplights or, a lot of traffic to concern ourselves with. So we have a great setup for training, and I'm excited that the kids are going to be able to do some running together as they work through their summer programs. And then as we get to August, getting back into official in-season practice.
Not to mention beautiful weather, 300 days of sunshine in Colorado. We'll just keep selling the program.
I know. I said this is turning into a recruiting pitch here. So,
well,
it is a beautiful area, and I think that's why so many people like Colorado. And it's just we have a very conducive environment to be successful at what we do, and that's really to the kids' benefit.
I do have one more question, ironically, about recruiting, and that is, what advice would you give for someone who isn't coming in this year but will be coming in or planning to come in the following year? What can they do? And you kind of mentioned some sort of things, but tell us more.
Yeah, stay on top of your academics. Get out in front of the application process, the USAF application process. The deadline is January 31. Some people say, well, just, for scholarship purposes or attracting attention, they're going to run really fast their senior track season. And at USAFA, that's you already have to be into school. It doesn't really matter how well you perform that senior year. So that's a bit of a challenge that we have. But with the application opening up this summer, encouraging rising seniors to take a look at that application, get going on those steps, reach out to the coaches. And that's not just with the Air Force Academy. I think a lot of people are concerned with the junior track season, with the cross country and distance runners and track and field, as well as all the events. They're concerned that they weren't able to post marks. I think any coach that's going to do their diligence will get to know you. They'll look at your progression of performances. And I really don't believe that the junior track season is going to end up being extremely limiting in terms of opportunities for rising seniors. But I do think that there are some challenges just because you do see people improve their junior year. So I would stay on top of the academics. That's going to be the main variable that opens a lot of doors to more institutions, including the Air Force Academy. Get on top of the applications, reach out to the coaches. And if you reach out to the coaches a few times over email or phone and you don't hear back, then that's something you may want to take into consideration as far as their interest level in you, but you will find people out there that are interested. And that's one of the things I love about cross country and track, whether it's NAIA, D3, D2, D1, if you love to run, there's an opportunity for you out there to do it in college. And so, as you kind of look at your different options, there will be somewhere that you can run. Now, if it's your dream school, then you may have to prioritize and make some decisions and some trade-offs on what your career aspirations and college goals are. But there's an opportunity to run in college, regardless who you are. And I think that's one thing that's really neat about our sport.
Which kind of brings us now to a new question. How do you prepare cadets for competition? Because you are at the United States Air Force Academy, which is different. But how does the service academy differ from maybe some civilian schools that you've been at?
Well, I think it's specifically to the Air Force Academy. We have a lot of challenges right up front that other institutions may not have. And there's a transition for all freshmen. Most of them are moving away from home for the first time. So learning to function as sort of an autonomous young adult, away from family, away from your comfort zone, away from what you've known over the last few years, that's going to be a transition. And I don't care what school you're at. Usually there's some learning curve to that. At the Air Force Academy specifically, a lot of our people are coming up to altitude. That's going to be a transition. Our freshmen are reporting tomorrow for basic training. That's going to be a transition. The lifestyle here has probably a bit more structure and discipline than at a lot of civilian institutions. That's an adjustment. So a lot of those things can be a little bit stressful, a little bit challenging. But I always tell people that what's a challenge at the beginning ends up being an asset at the end. And so the mental resiliency that you're going to develop as a cadet is going to benefit you as a distance runner. The challenges of going out and running at 7,000 feet every day, probably not going to be the most enjoyable thing at first. It's not like, running downhill with the wind at your back every day. That's going to be a benefit by the time you're 20, 22, in the upper stages of your running career. Just the type of structure that you learn to implement into your life, compartmentalizing things, prioritizing your time, learning how to roll with the punches and adversity and just unexpected or unforeseen circumstances, kind of like we've experienced this past spring. All of those things are going to benefit you. And it's a privilege and it's a unique experience, and it's a little nerve-wracking and exciting to be standing on the start line of a national championship. But the cadets here have went through a lot of unique experiences that kind of put that in perspective, that it's fun. It's something that they've worked really hard to earn and take advantage of that opportunity. But that start line will not be the scariest thing or the biggest challenge that they're going to have in their lives. And that's part of the education at the academy. And then in turn, that experience they have at the national meet is going to continue to further that education and that experience they have at the academy. So it's really neat how athletics kind of go hand in hand with what we're trying to accomplish for all of our cadets. And there's a platform, whether it's Wings of Blue, the Phase Zero program. I mean, there are a lot of very challenging opportunities here at the academy, and our cadets try to find the right ones for them. And we're very fortunate that athletics at an elite level gets to be a part of that.
You certainly are I don't know how better to put it, well decorated. You've had some accolades in your coaching career, but what has been your most rewarding moment in coaching at the Air Force Academy?
I have a really cheesy answer.
Go ahead.
I like going down to practice every day. I think if there was just one thing that stood out as like the crowning achievement, then we haven't been doing a very good job. There are a lot of instances that come to mind, but I really like going down to practice every day and getting to work with the team. That's my favorite part of what I do. So I would say that's the best moment. And if I can make that a really enjoyable moment every single day, then collectively we're going to have a pretty good experience. We're going to be setting ourselves up well for those competitions and preparing for that, like, we kind of talked about. And I get to have some unique, rewarding moments. But I think every day should be something that you enjoy and that you try to make the most of. And I'm getting old, so the whole goes by pretty quick. It starts to go by pretty fast. So you just want to be able to kind of enjoy the moment, make the most of the day. And you really start to I think the hardest part about coaching at the academy is the kids graduating, and moving on, because you always think, if we could have one more season, or if I could, I'd like to have them at practice for, one more year, or even one more day. And so seeing them move on is pretty challenging, but I think watching them develop from their freshman year to their senior year and getting to just work with those people every day at practice, that's my favorite part.
That's awesome that you have a good mindset on that. That's awesome. Okay. Favorite course to run, favorite race or meet to compete in?
That's easy. National championships. Doesn't matter where it is, what the course looks like. Your worst day, I had a coach tell me this after kind of a rough day at the national meet at the beginning of my coaching career. Your roughest day at the national meet is better than your best day sitting at home. So, favorite course, favorite race, national championships.
Awesome. There were an awful lot of questions on the Instagram account and on a lot of social media that I think were maybe some inside jokes. But we selected one of them, I believe. And so favorite breakfast cereal before a race. I know there's a story behind it, but you can just maybe enlighten us a little.
Yeah, I think a couple of the suggestions were really supporting and advocating for Fruit Loops. Fruit Loops are close to my favorite. I would say, they're not maybe the breakfast of champions, but they're like the breakfast of runner-ups. So, they're close to being the best. But there's a joke on the team about Fruit Loops. It's funny as you read down through those things. I think a lot of them are one-liners that I say, whether it's, how close we are at the end of practice, or how close we are to beginning a workout, or how close we are to being able to do our team meeting. I think sometimes the team wonders how close we are to one of my meetings being done. So there are a lot of little jokes that the team has that way. But just getting to read down through those things, it makes you smile, because you see, like, that's a pretty close group of people. and they've went through some experiences athletically and non-athletically that people at other institutions can't, they may kind of get it, but they don't fully get it. And so for those people to stay close like that and be able to see them chime in with their, what Bark's made out of, and just stupid little things we talk about at practice, kind of joking around and keeping things sort of light while we go about our business. It's pretty neat to see all those guys chime in, and I hope they know I miss them and think about them a lot. So yeah, that's a special group of people, and I'm glad they had some fun with that.
Yeah, let's talk about alumni a little bit. Obviously, they still consider themselves at least part of the program, social media wise, because they're chiming in on some of these questions and things. But how can alumni really help, and how do they help your program?
I think the best way, or the kind of the underlying way they can help our program, is just continuing to take pride in it. And they work, I think and you go into kind of fundraising, and people like to use the adage giving back. I don't really talk about giving back. If you make it through 4 years in our program, you don't owe us anything. You've done your part. Hopefully they feel like we've done our part. But I also hope they take a lot of pride in that, and they want to find ways to continue to invest in the program just like they did when they were cadets. And so that can happen in a lot of different ways. But I think ultimately that goes back into taking pride in the program that they helped, not necessarily build, but further. And so, some people say, you write your book, and it's like our book started long before I got here. It will continue long after I leave. We contribute a chapter each year. And hopefully, that's a pretty good story by the time it's all done, because of each group that's come through AFXC and contributed to that. But continuing to take pride in the program, reaching back and seeing how we're doing, stopping by the academy when they can, coming to events, because our people are spread all over the country and sometimes all over the world. But yeah, there are a lot of different ways they can stay involved, but I hope they never feel like they ever really leave the program. I just think that when your eligibility's up and you commission, your role changes. And, my role is different. My role isn't to put on the uniform and go, compete for the team, which is a good thing for the team, because we'd be worse if I were out there trying to race. So, the role changes, and we each have different roles. And whether you're on the team, recently graduated from the team, been gone from the team, or, maybe don't even know who I am because I didn't coach you, 20 years ago when you were on the team, that whatever role it may be, you try to play that role and contribute in that role to the program's success as best you can. And I talk to our team a lot about that, because a lot of people have high aspirations, and not everybody's going to be the number one person all the time. Not everybody's going to be on the varsity team all the time. Some people may be the number one person on varsity and get injured and not be able to compete that season. And so it's really critical that we always find a way to make our team better, regardless what that role is. And I hope alums view it that way, where we're not asking them to give back. We're asking them to stay involved, to continue to build the program that they put so much time and effort into as a cadet, and continue to make this just I know it's cheesy, but a transformational experience for the people as they come through AFXC.
No, I like that. I have one more question. That's all the fans' questions for you, but I kind of want to go back to your little book analogy there. And there, I guess you're writing a different chapter every year, but you also have your part of the book that's kind of like Ryan, right? This is Ryan Cole's part of Air Force Cross Country. How do you define your own, I don't want to say legacy, but how do you define what you are trying to accomplish while you are at the academy?
Well, I think we want to be an elite program. That's always one of our talking points. And I define that by consistently having both teams at the national championships. And we haven't done that in the same year yet. We've had a team at the NCAA meet the last 4 years in a row. 2 of them were men's teams. The other 2 years were the women's teams. I would love to see our group get to have that experience together. I would love that for the alums that, help the women's team get to the Division I national level. I would love to see that for our men that have been at that level. I would love to see them have that experience together. And then once you do it once, then you want to do it every year. So it's, I guess I hope we're able to, I feel like we're continuing to move closer and closer, but start to see that consistently come to fruition. And, one of the reasons I said that the national meet is my favorite meet, when you look at all the sports in the NCAA, we're one of the lowest participation in postseason at 10% or less of our sponsored cross-country programs in the NCAA Division I are at the national championships. Like it's a really, I'm not that biased in saying I think it's the hardest championship, or it's the hardest postseason to qualify for, just based off of the percentage numbers. So that's a big challenge for us. And I kind of like to use the phrase, Air Force is fly, fight, win. That's our slogan. And so at the academy, I say, we're not going to try fly, fight, try real hard. It's important in these people's developments that they set goals and they understand how to pursue those goals. But it's also important that we do it the right way. But goal attainment and goal accomplishment is a big deal. It's not just about did you try hard. It's, are we able to do some of these things? And so I hope we take people that maybe, there'll be coaches in the NCAA that say you can't compete at the highest level at the Air Force Academy because of everything else our cadets do. And I love seeing our kids prove them wrong. And so getting people that believe what we're trying to accomplish, they start to realize what they need to do, and seeing them attain that level, I hope they start to realize they're capable of more than they think they are. And I hope that's a transferable skill set that goes out into their life, because they'll be in some other challenging situations that maybe they're not sure if they're able to do it. And then they kind of think back, as kind of cliche as it is, to maybe some other situations they had even in running where they didn't think they could do some things, and then they find out they can. And I hope that's impactful in the rest of their life. But I also hope they enjoy it, because whether it's at the academy or any other place, you only get to be 18 to 22 once. And so I think I don't want to use the word legacy, but if my portion of the book is filled with people that overachieved, that maybe did more than they initially thought they were capable of, and they had a lot of fun doing it, I'd feel pretty good with that story.
Real, I'd feel pretty good with that too. That's great. That's all the questions I have, but I wanted to give you an opportunity if there's anything else you wanted to add.
Nope. There were a lot of, what, whys, and hows about Treb on social media. I think they forgot to ask where. Probably in the crack of the pole vault pit sleeping. They're still trying to figure out what bark's made out of. We have fun with what we do, and I really enjoyed seeing some of those questions, and I miss those people that have come through our program, and I'm excited to hopefully soon get back working with the people that are in our program, and we're definitely looking forward to welcoming our new people to the program. So yeah, I'm excited about the year, and just really appreciate the opportunity to talk about our program and answer some questions about what we do for Air Force Cross Country.
Awesome, Ryan. Stay safe. Thanks for taking the time, and we'll see you out there soon, I'm sure.
Thank you, Brian. Same to you, and appreciate your time this afternoon.